In 1954, a sixth grader sat at a wooden desk with an inkwell in the corner, chalk dust hanging in the light, and faced questions that would make most grown adults today reach for their phones. No calculators, no spell check, no second guesses, just a pencil, a blue-line tablet, and a teacher who expected you to know it cold. Some of these you'll breeze through, but number 6 stumped nearly every adult we tested, and number 1, a single word problem, no calculator allowed, separated the kids who passed from the kids who stayed after school. So grab a pencil and keep score. 25 questions, the same ones your grandparents faced at 11 years old. Get 13 right and you pass. Before we begin, hit subscribe because you may not do as well as you think. Let's start with number 25. Number 25. Here's your warm-up, the one every child could answer in their sleep because they chanted it 1,000 times. What is 12 times 12? If you said 144, you'd have earned a quiet nod from the teacher and nothing more, because in 1954, the multiplication tables weren't optional. Children recited them out loud in unison, rows of voices climbing from the 2s all the way to the 12s, the sound drifting down the hallway like a chant. You didn't reach for anything, you didn't count on your fingers. The answer simply lived in your head, drilled there by repetition until it was as automatic as your own name. A sixth grader who hesitated on 12 times 12 was sent to the board to practice while the others watched. Could you still answer it cold without a screen in your hand? Keep score. Number 24. Spell the word necessary. Take your time because in a 1950s classroom, you'd have written it on the board in chalk for the whole room to judge. The trick was remembering it takes 1 C and 2 S's, and generations of children learned it with a little rhyme about a shirt, 1 collar, 2 sleeves. Spelling was not a suggestion in those days. It was a weekly ritual. Every Friday brought the spelling test, 20 words read aloud while pencils scratched. And every spring brought the spelling bee, where a single misplaced letter could send a child back to their seat in front of the whole school. There was no red squiggle underneath to save you. You either knew the word or you didn't, and your grandmother learned 300 of them a year that way. Number 23, name the capital of the state of New York. If you said New York City, sit back down because you just fell into the oldest trap in the geography book. The answer is Albany. Sixth graders in the 1950s were expected to know all 48 state capitals, and teachers loved this one precisely because it caught the children who guessed instead of studied. Geography meant pulling down the big roll-up map at the front of the room, the one that snapped back with a bang if you let go too fast, and reciting states, capitals, rivers, and mountain ranges until they were second nature. A child was expected to point to any state on a blank outline and name its capital without hesitation. Most adults today can barely name 20 capitals. Your grandfather knew all 48 before he was 12. Number 22. In the sentence, the old dog ran quickly across the yard. Which word is the adverb? The answer is quickly, because it tells you how the dog ran. Grammar in the 1950s was not a vague notion. It was a science with rules, and every child learned to name the parts of speech on sight. Nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, pronouns, prepositions, conjunctions. You didn't just use them. You could identify them, label them, and explain their job in the sentence. Teachers drilled this with endless exercises, sentence after sentence to be dissected on the page. The idea that a person might reach adulthood unable to tell an adverb from an adjective would have baffled a 1954 school teacher entirely. If you got this one, you're keeping pace with an 11-year-old. Barely. Number 21. What is 3/4 plus 1/2? Do it in your head. The answer is 1 1/4. To add these, a sixth grader knew to find a common denominator, turning 1/2 into 2/4, then adding 3/4 and 2/4 to get 5/4, which is 1 1/4. Fractions were the backbone of 1950s arithmetic because everyday life ran on them. Recipes, carpentry, sewing, measuring cloth by the yard at the dry goods store. A child who couldn't handle fractions couldn't function in the adult world they were being prepared for. There were no shortcuts and no decimals to lean on. You learned to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions by hand, showing every step. And the teacher checked your work in red pencil. Did you get 1 1/4? Good, it gets harder. Number 20. In what year did Christopher Columbus first reach the Americas? The answer is 1492, and every child in America could recite it, usually alongside the little verse about sailing the ocean blue. History in the 1950s meant dates, and lots of them. Children memorized a timeline stretching from the explorers to their own decade, and they were expected to produce those dates on command. When did the Pilgrims land? 1620. When was the Declaration signed? 1776. There was a firm belief that a person could not understand their country without knowing its calendar by heart. Teachers tested these facts relentlessly, and a blank stare at 1492 would have marked a child as woefully behind. These weren't trivia to them. They were the shared furniture of an educated American mind. Number 19. Here's a vocabulary question with a Latin twist. What does the word peninsula mean, and where does it come from? A sixth grader could tell you it means a piece of land almost surrounded by water, and the sharper ones knew it came from the Latin pene, meaning almost, and insula, meaning island, and almost island. Word study in the 1950s often reached back to Latin and Greek roots because teachers believed that understanding the building blocks unlocked hundreds of words at once. Children kept vocabulary notebooks, copying definitions in careful handwriting and using each new word in a sentence. This wasn't reserved for the top students. It was the ordinary diet of a sixth grade classroom. And it's why so many people from that generation had vocabularies that put college graduates today to shame. Number 18. How many feet are in 1 mile? The answer, and you either know it or you don't, is 5,280. This was pure memorization, one of the many facts of weights and measures that a 1950s child carried around like loose change. There were no metric conversions to muddy the water, just the sturdy old system of inches, feet, yards, and miles, all of which had to be committed to memory. 12 inches in a foot, 3 feet in a yard, and 5,280 feet in a mile. Teachers drilled these numbers because the children would grow up to use them daily, buying lumber, measuring fields, reading distances on a map. Ask a random adult today, how many feet are in a mile, and watch them freeze. Your grandmother answered it without blinking. Number 17. Name the process by which green plants make their own food. The answer is photosynthesis. Science, or nature study as many schools still called it, was a real subject with real vocabulary. A sixth grader learned that plants take in sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide and turn them into food, releasing oxygen in the process. They could name the parts of a flower, explain the water cycle, and describe how a seed becomes a plant. Much of this learning happened outdoors and hands-on, with children pressing leaves, sprouting beans in jars on the windowsill, and keeping notebooks of what they observed. But the terms still had to be learned and spelled correctly. Photosynthesis was expected on the tongue of an 11-year-old, and a wrong answer here would have sent you back to the textbook. Number 16. How many branches does the government of the United States have, and can you name them? The answer is 3: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. Civics was taught seriously in the 1950s, and children were expected to understand how their country actually worked. They learned that Congress makes the laws, the president carries them out, and the courts interpret them, and they could explain how each branch checked the others. This wasn't abstract to them, it was preparation for citizenship, drilled with the same rigor as arithmetic. Children memorized the branches, the number of senators, the length of a president's term. A sixth grader who couldn't name the 3 branches would have been considered unprepared for adult life. Ask yourself honestly, could you have named all 3 without pausing? Number 15. How many states are there in the United States? Now be careful because the answer depends on the year, and in the early 1950s the answer was 48. Alaska and Hawaii didn't join until 1959, so a child taking this test in 1954 who said 50 would have been wrong. 48 states, and a sixth grader was expected to know everyone, along with its capital and roughly where it sat on the map. This is one of those questions that quietly separates the people who actually think about history from the people who assume the past looked just like the present. The flag itself had 48 stars, arranged in 6 neat rows of 8, and children saluted it every single morning. The country your grandparents grew up saluting was a smaller one than ours. Number 14, fill in the blank correctly. To blank should I give the book? Is it who or whom? The answer is whom because the word is the object of the preposition to. Grammar in the 1950s expected children to master the difference between who and whom, a distinction that has all but collapsed in casual speech today. The rule they learned was simple. Use who when it's doing the action and whom when it's receiving it. Teachers drilled this with substitution tricks, swapping in he or him to test which fit. It felt tedious to the children scratching away at their exercises, but it produced a generation that could write a clean, correct sentence without a second thought. If you got this one right, you're rarer than you think among modern adults. Number 13, name the first 3 presidents of the United States in order. The answer is George Washington, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson. In the 1950s, children didn't just know that Washington was first. Many could recite the presidents in sequence, at least the early ones, the way they recited the multiplication tables. History was taught as a story, with a cast of characters, and the presidents were the through line. Washington, the general who became the first president, Adams, the second, Jefferson, the third, who wrote the great founding document. Teachers pinned their portraits above the blackboard, and children copied their names and dates into notebooks. This kind of ordered, sequential memory has largely vanished from classrooms today. But for your grandparents, the presidents were as familiar as the members of their own family. Number 12. A winter coat costs $12. The store offers a 25% discount. What is the sale price? Work it out with a pencil. 25% of $12 is $3, so the sale price is $9. Percentages were essential in the 1950s because they governed real money, discounts, sales tax, and the simple interest on a savings account at the bank. A 6th grader learned to convert a percentage to a fraction or a decimal and apply it all by hand. Word problems like this filled the arithmetic books, dressed up in the everyday scenes of the era, coats and eggs and railway tickets. There was no register to do the math for you. If you shortchanged yourself at the counter, that was your mistake to catch. Did you land on $9? Keep going. Number 11, spell the word rhythm. Go ahead, try it out loud. This one tripped up children then and adults now, because rhythm breaks the comforting rule that every word needs a vowel you can hear in every syllable. R, H, Y, T, H, M. The Y does the work of a vowel, and there's not another true vowel in sight. Teachers included words like this on purpose to test whether a child truly knew their spelling or was just sounding things out. Alongside rhythm came other famous stumpers, words that had to be memorized letter by letter because sound alone would lead you astray. Spelling bees lived and died on words exactly like this one. A whole auditorium would go silent as a child squared their shoulders and tried to picture the word. Could you have spelled it under that kind of pressure? Number 10. In autumn, why do the leaves change color and fall from the trees? A 6th grader could explain that as the days grow shorter and colder, the trees stop making the green substance in their leaves, and the other colors hidden underneath finally show through before the leaves drop. They knew the word for the green substance was chlorophyll, and they knew the difference between a deciduous tree, which loses its leaves, and an evergreen, which keeps them. Nature study rewarded a child who paid attention to the world outside the window. They collected leaves, learned to identify trees by their bark and shape, and understood the turning of the seasons as a process with causes, not just a change in the weather. This was real science, taught to 11-year-olds, and most of them could explain it better than adults can today. Number 9. What is the longest river in the world? In a 1950s classroom, the answer taught and expected was the Nile, the great river of Egypt. World geography stretched a child's knowledge far beyond their own country. They learned the continents and oceans, the great rivers and mountain ranges, the major nations of the globe, all from that big pull-down map and a well-worn atlas. A 6th grader could point to Egypt, trace the Nile, and tell you it flowed north to the Mediterranean Sea. They memorized the tallest mountains, the largest deserts, the deepest oceans. The world felt enormous and knowable at the same time, laid out in facts to be learned. This wasn't advanced coursework. It was the ordinary reach of a sixth-grade education, and it produced adults who could hold a real conversation about places they'd never seen. Number 8. Which is correct? It is me or it is I. The grammar book answer, the one a 1950s teacher demanded, is it is I. The reason is a rule called the predicate nominative, where the pronoun after a linking verb, like is, takes the same form as the subject. It sounds stiff to modern ears, and almost nobody speaks this way anymore, but children in the 1950s were held to the formal standard. They learned that pronouns come in cases, and using the wrong one on a written test cost you points. This is the kind of precise, almost old-fashioned correctness that defined the era's grammar instruction. Whether or not you'd ever say, "it is I" out loud, your grandmother could tell you why it was right, and she could diagram the sentence to prove it. Number 7. Who wrote the Declaration of Independence, and in what year was it adopted? The answer is Thomas Jefferson in 1776. Every American child of the 1950s knew this pair of facts cold, along with the ringing phrase about all men being created equal. The founding of the country wasn't a hazy legend to them. It was a sequence of names and dates and documents they could recite. Jefferson, the author, 1776, the year, Philadelphia, the place. They learned about the Declaration and the Constitution as separate things with separate purposes, and they understood why each one mattered. Teachers believed that a citizen who didn't know how their nation was founded couldn't properly defend it. So they drilled the facts and the meaning alike, and a child who confused Jefferson with Washington on this question would have some studying to do that night. Number 6. Here's the one that stumped nearly every adult we tested. Diagram this sentence. The tall boy quickly read the book, not just read it, not just label the words, but diagram it, drawing the horizontal baseline for the subject and verb, the slanted lines for the modifiers, placing every single word in its correct structural place. Sentence diagramming was a rite of passage in the 1950s, a visual method for breaking a sentence into its skeleton so you could see exactly how it was built. The subject boy and the verb read sat on the main line, the and tall slanted beneath boy, quickly beneath read, and book as the object. Children filled entire pages with these diagrams. It's a skill that has almost completely disappeared from American schools, which is exactly why so few adults today could even begin it. Could you? Number 5. How many ounces are in a pound, and how many quarts are in a gallon? The answers are 16 ounces in a pound and 4 quarts in a gallon. Weights and measures were bread and butter knowledge in the 1950s, memorized in long lists and tested often. 16 ounces to a pound, 2,000 pounds to a ton, 2 pints to a quart, 4 quarts to a gallon. Children used these constantly, helping in the kitchen, running to the store, working on the farm. A recipe called for a certain weight, a jug held a certain volume, and you were expected to convert between them without hesitation. There was no app to do it for you, and no metric system to simplify things, just a firm grasp of the units that ran daily American life, drilled until they were automatic. How many did you get? Number 4. Recite a poem from memory. Any poem you learned in school. In the 1950s, memorizing and reciting poetry was a standard part of the 6th grade year, and a child might be asked to stand and deliver verses by Longfellow, perhaps the famous one about the midnight ride of Paul Revere, or the one about the village blacksmith under the spreading chestnut tree. Recitation trained the memory and the voice, and it filled a child's mind with rhythm and language they would carry for the rest of their lives. Standing at the front of the room, hands at your sides, delivering a poem without a single stumble was both a test and a performance. Ask a grandparent today, and many can still recite the poems they learned at 70 years later. That's how deeply it was drilled. Could you recite even one? Number 3, define the word diligent and use it in a sentence. A 6th grader would tell you it means hardworking and careful, showing steady effort, and might offer a sentence like, "The diligent student finished all her lessons." Vocabulary in the 1950s reached far beyond a child's everyday speech, stretching them toward the language of books, newspapers, and grown-up conversation. Words like diligent, temperance, prudent, and industrious were learned, defined, and put to use. These weren't obscure words to that generation. They were the ordinary tools of a literate person, and children were expected to add dozens of them to their vocabulary each year. The result was a population that could read a dense newspaper editorial with ease. Many adults today would fumble the definition of diligent. An 11-year-old in 1954 had it, and its cousins filed neatly away. Number 2, recite the opening of the preamble to the Constitution. Most 1950 sixth graders could begin it without a pause. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. They memorized it, as a matter of course, along with the knowledge that the first 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights, guaranteeing freedoms like speech, religion, and the press. Civics went beyond naming the branches of government. Children were expected to know the founding words themselves, to hold a piece of the Constitution in their memory as a kind of birthright. Teachers led the class in reciting it, and a well-schooled child could roll out those famous opening lines on demand. It's a small thing, perhaps, but it reflected a belief that the words a country is built on belong to every citizen, memorized young and kept for life. Number 1, here it is, the word problem that separated the children who passed from the children who stayed after school. No calculator, no paper if the teacher was feeling strict. Work it out. A farmer sells 3 dozen eggs at 45 cents a dozen and 12 pounds of butter at 60 cents a pound. With that money, he buys a plow costing $8.50. How much money does he have left? Take your time. 3 dozen eggs at 45 cents each comes to $1.35. 12 pounds of butter at 60 cents a pound comes to $7.20. Add those together and you get $8.55. Subtract the plow at $8.50 and the farmer is left with exactly 5 cents, a single nickel. This was the real test of a 1950s education. Several steps of arithmetic held in the mind at once. Multiplication, addition, and subtraction chained together. Every figure kept straight without a single digital crutch. A sixth grader who arrived at 5 cents earned the teacher's rare approving nod. Did you? So how did you do? Count up your answers, 13 or more, and you would have passed a 1950s sixth grade. Fewer than that, and you'd have been kept back to study while the other children went out to play. Either way, one thing is clear. The schoolhouse your grandparents walked into every morning asked a great deal of an 11-year-old, and most of them rose to meet it. Tell me your score in the comments, and tell me which question caught you off guard. I want to know if number 6 sent you spiraling the way it did the rest of us. Your grandparents knew all of this by heart. Now you know what they knew.